tax season is coming and it could get messy. So grab a pen and paper for today's video because you're going to want to make a list of all the things that you need to know for tax preparation this season that are different than in other years.
Any other year. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened in 2020 and now we have to account for it in 2021. So like Amber said, this will be important. Grab a notepad so you can write down these important tips so that you're prepared for your tax preparation meeting.
So we're going to give you 5 tips that you need to know about to be ready for tax season.
That's right.
So the first one is to do with charitable donations. Tell us about that.
So normally, in order to get a tax deduction for your charitable contributions, you have to itemize on Schedule A of your tax return. So in 2020, Congress changed the rules to allow people who do not itemize to actually get a tax deduction for their charitable contributions. And this is the way it works. For any cash contribution, you can deduct up to $300 per tax return. So whether you're single or married filing jointly, it's only $300 for 2020. But you don't have to itemize to take that deduction. You can get that deduction for charitable contributions even if you're just claiming the standard deduction.
So make sure you bring that information with you to your tax preparer if you did make a cash contribution to a charity. So the second tip is to do with these stimulus payments that most Americans have received over the last year, some in 2020, some in 2021. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, most Americans did receive them if they were eligible, and some didn't receive them because they were eligible but didn't file a tax return. So the important thing to note here is you need to fill out a new form. Every American will have a new tax form to fill out to account for those stimulus payments. So you need to know the exact amounts that you received before you go meet with your tax preparer. Don't just say, yeah, I got it, and when he or she asks you how much, you got to know that. So they also are going to want to know not just 2020, but also for 2021. So have both of those records available. If you did not receive the payment and you think you should have, you may have to file a return in 2021 for 2020 so that you can claim that stimulus payment.
Okay, good information. So the third tip is to do with unemployment benefits. Now this is very important because we had very high unemployment last year, higher than many previous years because of the pandemic.
Well, and a lot of people, Amber, were temporarily unemployed, right? Some companies shut down and paid unemployment for a couple of months or a couple of weeks and then brought workers back on as there were tax credits and things to do so. Most people don't realize that unemployment benefits are taxable income. Now, why do we point that out? If you think you have all your tax forms, your banks, your brokerage houses, your IRAs, everything's coming in, you think you're all set to go, you go to the tax preparer, you may have forgotten about there will be a 1099 for those unemployment benefits. So don't go to file your tax return until you make sure you have that form. And as Amber, you mentioned, there's a lot of people receiving them this year. My guess is these are going to be a little bit delayed, right? They have so many more forms to print this year, they might be a little delayed in getting those out to people. So make sure you have the unemployment information if you received any unemployment at all for 2020.
So if you fall into this category, just make sure you bring that with you to your tax preparer. Okay, tip number 4 is retirement accounts. There are a lot of rule changes to do with retirement accounts.
There were so many rule changes. We were doing weekly updates on the rule changes for retirement accounts in 2020. That's how often they were coming. So a couple of key points here. If you have a retirement account and you took money out of that from your 401k or IRA or TSP as your required minimum distribution, the IRS gave you the opportunity to send that back for 2020. You didn't have to take it if you didn't want. So that's important, right? If you took money out and you paid it back, you better have the paper trail to back that up. The other thing that changed in 2020 is Congress allowed you to take money out of your accounts if it was a qualifying event to do with the coronavirus and you were under age 59 and a half, they waived a 10% penalty. Now, I suspect that a lot of the 1099 forms that are going to go out might not account for that. They might include a 10% penalty for people under 59 and a half. So make sure you let your tax advisor know that, nope, this is not subject to that. And the third rule change there, Amber, we talked about in another video, is the qualified distributions. If you took money out of those retirement accounts and you plan to pay it back over 3 years, you need to figure that out with your tax preparer. Or if you took money out and want to pay the tax on that amount over 3 years, you've got to figure all that out. So a lot of stuff going on with retirement accounts for this tax season. It's going to be a busy season for tax preparers.
And if you have a competent tax preparer, he should be able to help you through this a little bit.
Exactly. And they should know, but it's going to be very helpful for you to bring this information to them so they can guide that discussion.
So our last tip that you need to know about has to do with working remotely from other states. Now this, again, was something very common in 2020 that we saw a lot of.
Right. States want their fair share of your money, right? So if you spent any significant amount of time outside of your home tax state, you need to have records of that. Which days, which states did you spend them in? And the government might, in those states, want to tax you on that income. Again, that's very specific to each individual, and each state has their own rules. But just let your tax preparer know if you spend a significant amount of time working out of state so they can determine if you need to file tax returns in that state as well.
Okay, so this is only to do with those who are working remotely, not if you are spending a month on vacations. So with this list of 5 things you should be able to get everything to your tax preparer that you need to hopefully pay the minimum amount of taxes that you need to pay for 2020.
We always talk about paying the least amount of taxes as legally possible. And remember, you can make the rest of your life the best of your life.
Plan now to retire happy.